For all of you who listen to Mackey's Second Floor Studios presents Submersion and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android device. I use the app and I love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure to set Mackey's Second Floor Studios as a favorite so you don't miss any of our new episodes. Again, the app is the Podcast Republic app, available on Android devices. Episode 44.
Woo!
And we are down some people tonight. We have got a skeleton crew of skeleton crews.
It's real tough. They're all back in the sick bay, hanging out, getting treated for crabs, I guess, right? That's the classic thing?
Yes.
They have serious cases of crabs, I believe.
I'm glad you said that because that was actually going to be what I said. Yeah.
All right.
Everybody's got crabs.
Right.
Except for us because we're clean.
Right. And so it's just we're flying solo. I tried to rope my brother from across the pond, and you'll see why it would make sense for this episode that potentially Patrick would have hopped on for this one because he's over in Great Britain, and this movie has a little something to do with Great Britain. It would have been good.
Yeah.
He could have broken out his British accent that he has now. And he actually has watched all the films in the franchise, except for one. I'm not sure why there's only one.
Why would he just miss one?
I'm not sure why he's missed one. I actually didn't even ask which one he has missed, but
hopefully it's not this one.
Yeah. Anyways, I mean, we're kind of dancing around the issue. We did watch a James Bond film.
Yes, we did. What began as an innocent conversation among friends would soon spiral out of control and later be referred to by future generations as the eighth wonder of the modern world. Mac East Second Floor Studios takes you on the journey of your lifetime as your captains, Alex the Mustard Man, the artist formerly known as Brom, Jamie the Brain, Kyle El Capitan, and Zach the Backbone present Submersion. How's that theme song go, Jamie? You're doing it.
Dun, 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 dun.
Bang! They don't do that.
I'll just sing the whole thing.
Great. Yeah, that'd be really great.
Enough, yeah.
Yeah, so the Bond film that we watched is the 1977 instant classic, The Spy Who Loved Me.
I don't think that's even totally an understatement. I'm not a huge Bond fan. I watch a lot of the later ones, Pierce Brosnan ones. I've watched a lot of the newer ones with
Daniel Craig,
with Clive Barker. What? Sorry, I was going to say Clive Owen as a joke, but no. But except for the latest, I didn't watch like the latest one. I kind of faltered, and even watching those recently, I never watched a full Sean Connery one except for when I was a kid. Like as a kid, we'd watch them every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't recall anything from any of Sean Connery one. So the older Bonds I really didn't watch at all. And
right.
So when I watched this, I was surprised at how kind of engaging it was. I had assumed they'd all be kind of like dry, old spy movies.
Yeah. But at the same time,
it's a lot of fun.
The at least up to the Pierce Brosnan one, it doesn't seem like things have changed that much. You know, it's the same formula.
Even the Pierce Brosnan ones. Oh, you're saying including?
I said those ones too.
Yeah. The Pierce Brosnan, like that was another kind of surprising thing. It's like this isn't really any different than a Pierce Brosnan one for the most part.
Right.
It's all kind of the same how it works. Yeah.
So, anyways, this was directed by Lewis Gilbert, and it stars Roger Moore.
Yeah.
007.
And I certainly don't remember watching anything with Roger Moore. Any of them with Roger Moore.
No.
I've watched things with Roger Moore, obviously. Like, I think it's called The Quest, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think that has Roger Moore in it. It's quite good.
The Quest.
Yeah.
Barbara, you say Bach?
I think it's Barbara Bach, right?
Okay. As Agent XXX, or she has some impossible to pronounce Russian name.
Maybe that's an overstatement. It's Anya Amasova.
Okay. Well, Jamie's got it. Our boy, Kurd, is back.
Kurd Jurgens.
Yeah. As Carl Stromberg, the bad guy. Yeah. And another bad guy, Richard Kiel.
Right.
Who is Jaws.
And the heir to the Kiel's soap fortune.
Mm-hmm. For those of you who might not know, Richard Kiel was also the boss in Happy Gilmore, right?
No,
he was
the boss? He wasn't the boss. No, he was the spectator.
Oh.
In Happy Gilmore. Remember, he was a giant spectator who loved Happy Gilmore.
Did he get a nail through the head in the beginning?
Well, so he got a nail through the head, and that's So he was the boss of Happy Gilmore in one of the flashbacks.
Okay.
And so Happy Gilmore shot a nail into his head. And so when he became big, he showed up at one of the tournaments and was a huge Happy Gilmore fan. And he's the one who chases after and beats up the asshole guy, the bad guy.
First, I thought you were going to say Bob Barker. I was like, no. Bob Barker lets loose. How tall do you think he is?
I know how tall he is.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, he's 7'3".
Oh, I saw 7'2".
Well, I don't know. Sometimes they lie for basketball purposes. You know, on like basketball, they want to make him taller. Maybe for this movie, they were like, "You're 7'3", you're not 7'2".
Yeah. We see you have an extra little layer under your shoe. And finally, last but not least, Caroline Munro, who is in there.
She was barely in the movie. I was actually surprised to see her keep on being listed really high up in credits or whatever.
Right.
She shows up just very briefly in the movie. And it's not even like she's like one of those actresses who is like, oh, we really got to put her high because we got her in here. And she's like this bombshell, like kind of pinup person who everyone's going to know. Like she was basically like a small time fantasy sci-fi actress from Italy. It was weird.
Oh, really?
I didn't understand it. Like I was like, wait, she barely talks. She's hardly in the movie.
Yeah. But yeah, she was listed very high on most of the things. I almost had my timer set for 49 minutes.
That'd be perfect.
That's exactly our listeners would have really loved.
Yeah, we would have really underestimated how long we're actually going to talk about this movie.
All right, let's get into it. What's it open with?
It opens up with, the theme song, kind of, but it opens really with submarines.
Oh, yeah.
Right away. We do a very brief thing where they show James Bond kind of in like the circle thing. I don't know if you had that. I had my version that I watched was on of my own version or whatever. But then it goes in straight into a submarine cruising about.
And dude, this submarine is extremely roomy.
Yeah, and it's huge. It's a British one. I believe this was the British one that they showed first.
Yes.
And yeah, it doesn't look like a submarine at all inside. It reminded me of this other movies that kind of had that same thing. There was like The Abyss. I feel like it felt kind of similar to The Abyss.
12-foot ceilings.
You feel like you could just it's like got like 2 rooms as part of like the main kind
huge.
Of area. Yeah, it's just like gigantic.
It's not a typhoon, for God's sakes.
Right, and so they're kind of cruising along, and they start to lose power. Yeah. And everything's going crazy. So they're like, okay, we're going to blow our ballasts, head to the surface and try to figure this all out. And they head to the surface and they look through there because they completely lose power. And they look through the periscope and they're like, holy shit.
And then it cuts on over.
Smash cut. Yeah.
And what happens? We lose that submarine. It is totally gone.
That submarine's gone. And then we also find that there's a Soviet submarine that also is gone in a similar way because we get some flash sideways to the Soviet minister, kind of the equivalent to M, right?
Yes.
To M. Yeah, M's equivalent. And he's kind of like, we need to bring in our best agent to be able to investigate this.
And get Agent XXX.
Gotta get XXX.
And then it cuts on over to a love scene with a attractive woman and an extremely hairy gentleman.
Yeah, so they're boning in some luxurious like cabin somewhere in the wilderness of Russia, presumably. And she's like, let's cuddle and bone some more. And he's like, I wish I could because you're beautiful and I'm beautiful. I've got all this luxurious hair. Do you want to put your fingers through it? And she's like, yeah, obviously. And she does. And then she's like, okay, but I got like a mission to go to. I got to go to Austria. So see you later.
But the way they kind of, do this, it makes it look like I get that she's not going to be the agent.
Right, it seems like it's going to be the guy and that he's going to, but then they get like a little message being like, oh, you have a message. And he gets out of bed and she goes and says, oh, I have to go back to Russia to talk to the minister about this lost submarine or whatever. And so, they kind of a little switcheroo.
Yeah. Yeah. And then anyways, we cut on over to England and they got a similar situation going on.
Well, this is you're talking about Austria.
Well,
I see
England,
what you're saying.
They're like, hold on, we got to send our best guy. Like, get 007. Well, he's on a mission in Austria. Did you notice this?
Oh, shit.
Did you notice this?
What, that they were both going to Austria? Or?
Well, no, but they're like, well, tell him to pull out.
Oh, yeah.
And then they cut on over, and he's in a banging scene.
This was where there was a lot of surprises here of just how many really kind of risque. First of all, there were tits all over the place here, and I mean, in multiple scenes where there are tits, and I was like, wait, Bond films are? But then I forgot that like back in the day, you could just have tits all over the place, and they'd be like, it's not enough tits, PG. And so like these are all like PG
I kept
films.
forgetting it was a PG film.
It's a PG film.
All the innuendos, all that stuff.
Well, there's no PG-13 then, so there's only PG or R, and there just wasn't enough in a Bond film to be like you're R. No, it's all PG.
Right.
It's like a child goes in, and there's like tits flying everywhere, and they're making
the good old
risque
days, man.
jokes. It really is, yeah. So I was really surprised at how many jokes there were like that, because it happened a lot. There were a lot of times where James Bond was just like this crazy horn dog, like could not. He literally was so distracted all the time by the possibility.
You're like, how is this guy doing anything else other than like in Sex Addicts Anonymous?
There were literally times where it'd be like, I got work to do, and someone would be like, but what about this lady? And he'd be like, work can wait. It's like you're an agent. What do you got to go say something? Oh my God.
He doesn't care, man.
No.
He is propagating the earth.
It's better to taste the treasures of a land. It's like, Jesus.
Oh yeah, that was funny. But all right, so there was also a really funny line here during this lovemaking scene.
Yeah, in Australia.
In Austria.
Not Australia. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
The woman looks at 007 and she's like, oh, I just don't have the words. And he looks at her and just says, enlarge your vocabulary.
Right. Enlarge your vocabulary,
and then
AKA.
he just leaves and starts skiing down the mountain.
In a banana suit. Yeah.
Yeah, banana-colored suit. Amazing, like, 70s song playing.
Yeah.
Green screen is so cheesy. It looks so fake.
It's a 70s version of the Bond theme song kind of going on. And not only that, but the woman was like a double agent, so that's where like the Russians come in. So that guy who was boning the Agent Triple X, he shows up with a bunch of skiers, and they start skiing after James Bond. And he's kind of skiing about. And crazy green screen. There was a bunch of like cheesy stuff in this where you're just like, I'm confused at whether this was supposed to be funny, where someone was kind of like having a laugh at stuff. Because it looks so stupid at certain times. But then he like turns around and he shoots them, and there's like incredible stunt at this point. I was like, whoa, wait a second. Like, you go from basically this crazy, stupid green screen looking thing to like legitimately a real person jumping off a cliff and base jumping off of like a ski mountain.
Oh yeah. I mean, and
wait, what?
You just start seeing him free falling. And I'm like, how high up is this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like it's a couple miles up in the air.
Yeah. I forgot the guy's name, but he literally, that stunt man, because of that stunt, has like a Wikipedia page. It's like, this guy was a stunt skier, and he's most famous for jumping off a cliff in The Spy Who Loved Me. I was like, whoa. He's like basically famous because he did that. And it's crazy looking and amazing.
Yeah.
Apparently they paid him all this money. He paid like $30,000 before. And then if it was successful, he got another $30,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Something is crazy. Anyways.
Wow, I dream. $60,000 to jump off a cliff, parachute down. But anyway, when the parachute opens, music cuts right in, right at that moment. It's the British flag. And then we get the classic James Bond credits rolling.
Yeah. And so, there's tits everywhere. Women doing like gymnastics nude. And a really great song. I actually really enjoyed the song too. The themes are all done by different people for all the movies and stuff. And I thought this one was pretty good.
Dude, I was really digging the 70s theme music. Yeah. You know, just the awesome disco-ness of it.
Yeah. And so then we flash over to James Bond in England, and they're basically trying to figure out exactly what's going on, right? Because like, I guess actually at this point we get a little glimpse into the bad guys lair. No, or is that after this?
That's a little bit after, but right before this, we're over in Russia. And we find out about the sub going missing, and that there might be somebody rogue going, or somebody going rogue. And also we find out that Triple X's lover has been killed.
He was the one who was shot by James Bond.
Whoa! We don't find that out till later.
No, but we saw it. They showed it.
Yeah.
And they showed his face.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they shot it. James Bond shot him, and then he fell on the ground, and they like focused on his face. Like you could tell it was him.
I thought it would have been just like credits, random ski guy number 6.
No.
Okay.
Sorry. And so anyways, we kind of get a few different things going on. Both England and Russia, they know that that something's going on in Egypt. That basically the key to this whole thing is happening in Egypt. They have a contact there, but someone was trying to sell some technology that's able to track subs.
Yeah, it can track their wake. And that's what they were able to determine, because somehow Bond got a hold of some microfilm that shows, oh, here's the map.
Yeah, they got microfilm that was being shopped around to basically show, like, we have a map of where an American sub was going when really no one's supposed to have that map. Mm-hmm. So, like, clearly they have some technology to be able to determine that map.
And one of the reasons that this is so bad that this submarine went missing is it has 16 Polaris nuclear missiles on board.
Right.
And people kind of want to get their hands on that during the Cold War.
Right. And so then we also get a little scene with our bad guy, Stromberg, right? That's his name, Stromberg?
Yeah. Just call him Kurd.
Kurd Jurgens. And he's hanging out, and he's kind of a funny bad guy. I don't know. It's a little weird, as you'll see. Like, his ultimate fate is pretty lame, but like,
agreed.
So he's kind of this big time marine biologist. Anyways, he has this kind of submarine, layer / base / research lab or whatever,
and /spider
slash spider. And so they've been developing this submarine thing. He has a scientist come in who helped him develop it, and he's like, here's all your money, don't worry about it. And they're like, oh, thank God, like, we're probably not going to get killed by this guy. And
but before they are allowed to leave, he's like, hey, I know that somebody has been trying to sell this thing. And he's like, honey, because he's got some lady there, he's like, why don't you go ahead and leave the room? Why don't you go to the elevator? And then she goes up, and he hits a button and drops her into a shark tank. He's like, I knew you were selling these secrets.
You were the one selling it. And she gets eaten by a shark. And then they're like, oh, shit, we better get out of here. So they kind of like, oh, sweet, we'll just take this helicopter. Don't worry about it. And they get on a helicopter, the scientists, and start flying away. And Kurd Jurgens is just like, and blows it up. And it's just like, fuck you guys.
Yeah. That was so funny. just this time, Eric, because he's like, I will have $10 million each transferred to your Swiss bank account.
They cancel the transfer.
Yep.
And so anyways, so he knows he's not, I mean, obviously he's not happy about it, but like, he needed these trackers. He didn't want them sold, but someone within his own party was kind of selling them. And now that allows Bond and XXX to kind of get on the trail.
Yeah.
And so Bond heads to Egypt. They have a contact there, which I'm kind of forgetting the name of, but
I can't remember. Anyway, he looks like he's Lawrence of Arabia, man. He is like full on Egyptian mode. He is got the whole garb on. He's riding camel. Those camels are hauling ass.
And Kurd Jurgens also sends 2 of his agents to kind of like kill whoever is kind of trying to track these kind of the submarine thing.
One of the thickest, most stout men on the planet.
Yeah, which you kind of knew he had to die because the other guy was Jaws, who was like a super famous Bond villain. So you're like, okay, this guy's going to be the real deal. And it turned out to be true. I mean, it was kind of crazy how much kind of more important Jaws was than almost anyone else in the movie. Like he was around all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, he's also in Egypt. And so Bond is trying to like set up a meeting with a guy. And it turns out that XXX has already set up a meeting with that person as well.
But anyways, this is one of the times you were talking about where Bond is in this tent meeting his
first contact. Yeah, the first contact.
And the guy's like, "Oh, you should stay here for the night." He's like, "No,
I really should go to the meeting. Yeah, I really gotta. Like, it's pressing. This is really pressing.
Yeah, there's potential nuclear war about to break out.
Don't worry about
it. Dangles this hot woman.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Well, what does he say? What's he say?"
He says like, it's always good to taste the treasures of like a land or something like that.
Yeah,
or sample the treasures of a land. It's like, Jesus, James Bond. How about you hold it together for a little bit and try to do a mission? He's just like, I gotta fuck. I'm sorry. I just gotta fuck.
He's like, so I've been like 4 hours.
Yeah,
I'm freaking out of here.
Yeah, he's clearly a sex addict, and we should probably talk about it.
I mean, it comes up multiple times. And if you want to get that guy killed, like it almost literally happened.
But yeah, he doesn't. It doesn't take a lot for him. Like James Bond is like a bad spy because then he goes for that first meeting, try to find the guy he wants to meet up with, and he goes there, and there's a woman there, and the stout guy's there as well, going to try to kill Bond. The lady tempts Bond for like 5 seconds. Like literally, it's just like, oh hey, how about you want to smooch me? And he's like, I'm digging it. I'm into it, and starts smooching her. And it's only because she has kind of a change of heart at the last second that she like goes no and like gets in front of the bullet by the stout guy. He would have been straight up killed because he could not stop himself.
It was really weird though.
He couldn't help it.
Because wasn't that the wife of the guy he was trying to meet anyway?
I think
or
so.
something?
I don't know.
And she's like, why don't I just bone this sexy agent.
And then it's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself for him too.
Yeah. I love him so much. I'll just take a bullet.
And so James Bond runs to the top of the thing, beats the shit out of the stout person.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't even care about the woman.
Yeah, no.
She could have been okay. I don't know.
Gets some information of where the big meetup is going to be happening and lets the stout guy fall to his death. Got a license to kill. And he kills a lot of people. And so anyways, he heads to the pyramids where this meet is happening and sees XXX meeting with the guy. And it's like, oh, shit. So he's kind of waiting out, trying to find an opportunity to potentially talk to the guy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets all freaked out because he sees Jaws, this giant kind of standing there.
Like a light just shines on him.
It was so weird. Yeah, it was a very strange display. They were watching some kind of like presentation about the pyramids and a light kept on shining on Jaws.
And I thought, is he the one giving the presentation?
Right, exactly.
I'm Jaws, here to give the presentation. Also, he never speaks.
No.
Not in the entire movie.
And so then he runs. So the guy that James Bond is trying to meet up with runs into the kind of the pyramids. And Jaws follows him, and he tries to lock the door, but Jaws has these metal teeth. Obviously, it's super famous. If you don't know about it, look up a picture or something, I guess, or watch the movie. But he like bites through the lock to be able to get to him, and eventually just bites his neck, which is like his go-to move. Is almost like a Dracula type thing.
I know. I didn't think that was going to be it.
No, he like crushes. Yeah, he like crushes the people's jugular veins or whatever.
Oh yeah,
jugular, and then they bleed out.
I wish there was more blood.
Yeah, it was weird a little bit that they didn't bleed so much, but
yeah.
Anyways, he kills him and kind of runs out, and James Bond is there like freeze, but then the lights go out, so Jaws gets away.
And all right, so up to this point, Jaws is just lumbering around. He's not a fast guy.
Nope, not at all.
But then as soon as there is like a split second, he's able to completely get out of view.
Yeah, you'd think James Bond would just look slightly to his right and be like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, like, dude, you only took one step.
Yeah.
But anyways, XXX rolls up and she says, oh my God, you just killed that guy that I was meeting with.
You killed that guy, man.
And he's like, no, man, it wasn't me. And then she sicks two of her henchmen. I don't know where she got them.
I have no idea either, yeah. But he's like, totally beats the shit out of them. She's like, I like this dude. He's like, wait, is she a woman? Yes, I like her too. Because I am a sex addict and it doesn't matter anything about the person. I am going to bone her.
And the next scene, they're meeting at a bar.
Yeah, straight up. Already, they're buying drinks for each other. She wants a something or other. He wants a shaken, not stirred classic or whatever. But they each kind of know each other's drinks. It's kind of supposed to be the funny thing is they know who they each are because they're both spies. So even though we've never seen her before in a James Bond film, like, James Bond knows who she is. She's XXX.
Yeah.
Like, obviously. And
she's famous.
Knows her drink. She knows his drink, et cetera, et cetera. So they kind of flirt for a second, but then he's like, I got to bounce. I got like a pretty important meeting. Don't worry about it.
Did you notice the total dick move he did here?
He left without getting the drink, right? Yeah.
Which they did bring up because it gave her a reason to come find him. But I was like, wait a minute. What? That guy just leave?
Yeah. And so he goes to meet like the person who has the tracker or whatever, or I guess the microfilm that details how the tracker works.
Yeah.
And starts bidding. He's like, okay, well, the person who's supposed to come here isn't going to be here, but I'll bid on it. And then XXX comes up and she's like, I'll also bid on it. And so they try to get into a bidding war a little bit. But then the guy gets a call and he's like, oh shit, I got to take a call, man. I'm just going to head over here. Don't worry about it. I probably won't get killed by Jaws. So you just wait here. And so he goes off and gets killed by Jaws.
Yeah.
And Jaws takes the tracker. And James Bond is like, oh, we probably shouldn't have let him go to that telephone without maybe watching him or something, because someone might have come up and killed him by biting his neck.
In the neck.
Right. And then he goes over and is like, oh shit, that happened.
And he's dead. And what's he do?
He leaves evidence as if he killed, like he basically puts his fingerprints all over something and lays it on the body. It's like, come on, man.
No, dude, there was a phone booth right there. Yeah. And he takes an out of order sign and puts it on the dead guy. It's like, what?
A police investigator who found that body would be like, well, we have the killer.
Yeah.
He's got
here's his calling card.
Got fingerprints all over this out of order sign he laid on the body. It's like, what are you doing, James Bond? You're the worst spy. You get tricked by ladies because you're a sex addict horn dog, and you just like leave evidence as if you are committing crimes everywhere.
Right.
Probably M6 or whatever he's part of is like, God, fuck this dude, man. Yeah. Come on, James Bond. I can't believe we gave him a license to kill.
They're sending him on these suicide missions because they're like, it's got to happen at some point, right?
Got rid of him at some point. Come on. And so they pile into the van, the telephone repair van that Jaws is driving.
Because he disguised himself as to sneak into this bar, which looks like anybody could have got into anyway.
And so he starts driving, and they think they're all clever. They're kind of like talking in the back of this van and like real like flirty, like whatever. And of course, Jaws is like a microphone in the back of the van, so he's hearing everything they say.
All right.
What idiots.
If you were in the back of a van,
would you talk all that much?
No, with somebody that who's been trying to kill you and you're trying to get the jump on them, I would not talk at all.
I wouldn't talk at all either. It's so weird. Like they're basically leaning against this thing, talking. Wouldn't Jaws, even if he didn't have the microphone, be
you
like,
could hear something?
Why is someone? It sounds like someone's talking, like kind of in my ear.
Yeah. I mean, okay. There's like an 1/8 inch of metal separating us.
Yeah. They're like moving around. Like, it's just like, come on, just be better spies. God damn it. So knowing that they were back there, he kind of drives into the desert to these ruins and basically lures them out to fight them. And so they leave the van. Bond like takes the keys as like, cause he's like slightly smarter than XXX. They're both dumb as rocks, but like he's slightly better. Yeah. And they run after Jaws. They get in a big fist fight, and Jaws is going to kill James Bond, but XXX has a gun, is like, stop. And then they're able to eventually kind of get Jaws to hit and collapse like a piece of the building on him. So
he hits some scaffolding, and
you think Jaws was dead, but
then you see his hand come up from the rubble.
So he becomes almost like an unstoppable force, which is really fun. It's actually like a really fun aspect of the movie. Yeah. Is that Jaws never really dies. He's always just kind of like shaking his head like, ooh, when something crazy happens. Yeah. Because then they get in the van and she's going to drive off without him, James Bond, and he comes in and has the keys and like, well, thanks for abandoning me. Like, come on, like, whatever. And they start to drive away.
But don't worry.
But Jaws stops it. Like, literally grabs the van and it can't move anymore. He like lifts the tires off the ground and shit.
He gets on top and just bare hand. He's not even biting into anything. Just like starts peeling the metal back on the roof of the van.
And she's trying to get away, but she's like, can't drive stick or something like that.
And then, James Bond with his classic line here.
Misogyny, like, yeah.
It's like, ooh, women drivers.
He's like, women are objects, sex objects for me, and also they can't drive. And it's like, Jesus.
Come on, 007, you animal.
Get to the new century. Isn't this the age of, like, feminism or something? Jesus Christ.
So anyway, like this battle with the car goes on for a while. I mean, they're trying to drive. He literally lifts the back end up so they can't even move the car.
They back him into the wall. Like, again, unstoppable force. They back the van up with Jaws on the back of the van into a brick wall. Mm-hmm. And Jaws just gets up afterwards and like runs after the van. It's like, whoa, like he would literally have like crushed and broken his hip like in multiple places. It's crazy.
Not Jaws, man.
Not Jaws. Presumably, I guess maybe his bones are all metal. I have no idea.
I hope so.
Yeah, one would think. Anyways, so at this point,
the car breaks down, and they have to walk like 1,000,000 miles to, I don't know, some river.
Yeah, they get on a boat because James Bond can speak Egyptian or Arabic, and then
they start hooking up on this boat.
Straight up hooking up.
Because what are they talking about? What is a woman's biggest turn on?
I actually can't recall. What is it?
Siberian survival tactics.
That's right. Yeah. So they're talking about survival tactics. It's all about like body warmth or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And then he's like touching her leg and she's like, "Can I have a cigarette?" And he's like, "Oh, just when it was getting good." And then she blows some sleeping powder in his face. Oh. And he's like, "Fuck, I'm asleep now." And then he falls asleep. And
I wish we could have seen his dream. That's all it was. He's just so pissed. Like, damn it.
Or him kind of just like walking around and there'd be a lady be like, "Oh, hi." And he's like, "I'm going to bone you." And then like 5 minutes later, he'd be like, "I'm done with you." And like walk along and another lady would come up and be like, "I'm also boning you." And he'd be like, "Jesus." Sai even dreams like a horn dog weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he wakes up and he's kind of like, "Where did she go?" And all the Egyptians are like, "You look like an idiot.
Why are you wearing a suit? Like we're all dying here in the heat."
And so then he heads to
some kind of secret room inside a pyramid?
I guess it's like kind of a safe housey type thing where M is and also Q and the Russians are as well. He's surprised to find that the Russians are there and he's like, fuck. Like, I'm going to kind of end up being a little embarrassed. Because one thing is he also looked at the microfilm, like the microfilm when he was on the boat and figured out that it wasn't really all that important. It wasn't super duper informative just from a technical standpoint. Like they're not going to be able to remake the tracking machine or anything like that from it.
No.
And so the Russians are like, "Oh, hey, we got this thing. Like she's much better than you." And James Bond is like, "Well, it's not really super useful. We should probably analyze it together with Q, who's much smarter than everyone in this room because we're seriously dumb. And then maybe M and his other persons, maybe they're a little smarter, but Q's way smarter anyways."
And then they cut over to Q and he's making all sorts of crazy contraptions. Like some guy's smoking a hookah and then like he can turn it and it shoots bullets out. What else did they have? They had some kind of seat that you just sit on and it like explodes upwards.
They had
on a
one
spring.
where something where like a spike shot out of something, and they had one where it shot like this. Oh wow, really? I couldn't. Really? We've been talking for that long.
We have got to speed this up.
Well, the problem is James Bond is such a horn dog that we couldn't stop talking about how he just wanted to bone ladies. So I blame James Bond and how he needs to get to the 21st century.
Well, don't worry, man, because in the next scene, like you just cut on over and him and Triple X are in a train, and that's all he's thinking about is boning ladies.
You did skip over the most important part of them analyzing the thing, which they basically analyze the microfilm and they find out that there's like some evidence that it points to Stromberg.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like, oh, you know, and they kind of show off their smarts. They're like, oh, that kind of looks like a symbol for like something or other. And then she's like, oh, that's like, oh no, he's like, that's Stromberg's symbol. Like he's got a lab in something or other. And she's like, no, it's actually in this other Sargento or something like that. Sargento cheese, Italy.
All right. So anyways, they get on the train and
they're heading to Italy. Yeah.
Yes. Bond wants to bone. She's shutting it down.
Right.
But guess what? When it's time to go to bed, she opens her closet door, and what inside a tiny train closet is waiting for her, but like an 8-foot tall man, Jaws ready to kill her.
Yeah. So he like overpowers her. She's trying to scream and stuff like that, and he's about to kill her, but James Bond hears the scream, comes out, pops some champagne over his head, then gets in this...
that's going to stop that guy.
No, and then he gets in this big fist fight with him, and eventually he's able to kind of do a little trickery and push him out the train window. So now the train's like totally open to the environment, which kind of sucks for them. Yeah. And so he's like, it's a little drafty in my room. You know, we also see Jaws kind of brush himself off and kind of walk away. Yeah. But he was fine. He just fell out the window of a speeding train. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But like,
didn't even stain his white jacket on his suit.
Right. And so then James Bond is like, it's a little drafty in my room. Do you mind if we bone in this one?
She's like, fine.
Yep.
I guess you earned it.
You earned it because you saved my life. So yes, we will bone now.
And then they get to Italy where they're going. Q shows up, gives them an awesome car. It's the Lotus E-Spirit S1.
It is one of the most famous cars from James Bond.
It is super cool.
And it's not just famous for being super cool, but it's also super cool for another reason, which we'll talk about.
Oh, yeah.
And it's relevant to this podcast.
Mm-hmm. So then all of a sudden they make their way to a hotel.
Yeah. They're pretending to kind of be like newlyweds of sorts. They are kind of falling in love, although they don't want to admit it. And it's kind of weird because they're like, it's the Cold War. Obviously, it's Cold War month. We didn't even talk about it. We didn't even sing the song or anything like that, but it is Cold War month.
Because we knew we just had to get right into it.
We had to because we were definitely going to speak for 40 minutes about this movie.
Yeah.
But it'd be really weird for like a Russian and American or British spy to be like in love or whatever.
Definitely. Yeah. While they're, all spooning and stuff at this hotel, they have a meeting set up with Kurd.
Straight up. Kurd Jurgens.
And he sends Naomi to come pick them up. And this scene was so funny to me. They are hauling ass in this boat into what is clearly a no-wake zone. I mean, they're maybe like 15 foot from the shore going 40 miles an hour. There's people swimming. You're like, what is going on here?
Yeah, you may not know, but Kyle's actually a boat lawyer. He knows all about no-wake zones and the kind of the dangers of that and kind of the law that governs the no-wake zones specifically. Because that's like your specialty.
Boat law.
Yeah, boat law and specifically where you can or can't create wake. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I started out by studying law. And
then you studied boats.
Yeah. And then I studied boat law.
Right.
It's a little throwback to last week's episode.
And so they end up going out to Kurt Jurgens, and he's basically like, oh, hi, fake name that James Bond is using. You are definitely a marine biologist. Tell me about marine biology. And James Bond is like, fish? And Kurt Jurgens is like, sure, you sound smart. Anyways, look at this hand I got in a fish tank that clearly I killed someone in. And also, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I'd be so mad if that was the meeting.
Because James Bond,
dragged his ass to Italy. You take a boat ride out there. Jurgens literally meets with him.
Jergs him around, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic Jurgens, just jerking him around.
Yeah.
I mean, what do they meet? Maybe like 45 seconds?
Right, at most, yeah. And then James Bond leaves. He kind of like catches up with his, honey, who's pretending to be a secretary, which is like really insulting. And they're like, let's get out of here. Let's get the fuck out of here. And they leave. And then Kurt Jurgens immediately brings in Jaws, like, was that him? And Jaws is like, yeah. And then he's like, yeah, kill him. Like, Jesus Christ.
He blew up those scientists.
I know, yeah.
Why didn't he just blow them up?
I have no idea. I think it's because he's got to keep Jaws happy, right? It's kind of like feeding the center in basketball. Like if you have like a big center in basketball, you got to feed him the ball or else he's going to get unhappy because you just shooting threes. He's like bored in the middle. You got to feed him every once in a while, keep him happy.
Gotcha.
Feed the giant.
All right. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyways, they're speeding away in the Lotus and all of a sudden they start getting chased by a helicopter.
Sure.
And who's piloting that? Naomi.
Right. Yeah.
Not for long, but
right. Yeah, it didn't work out great for her.
Yeah. So, anyways, there's a nice chase scene ensues.
It is a pretty good chase scene. Yeah.
Yeah. We got what is it? Motorcycles, cars, everybody all over the
motorcycle
Lotus.
with a sidecar.
Yeah.
Was there a reason why he had a sidecar?
I'm not sure.
There was never anyone in the sidecar, right?
I don't think so.
No, he just had a sidecar in it.
I've always wondered that whenever you see a car chase in a movie, you know, somebody's on a motorcycle. I mean, granted, motorcycles are very maneuverable.
Sure.
But with a car, you just bump it.
It's over.
Right?
Yeah. So then maybe that's why he had the sidecar. Let's discuss why he had a sidecar for the next 15 minutes.
All right, I'm down.
Okay. And so then, yeah, there's a motorcycle, there's the helicopter, and how does he blow up the helicopter again? He kind of like maneuvers around, and it's actually pretty cool to see the helicopter fly.
Yeah.
He like quickly turns around, the helicopter quickly turns around, and then he quickly turns around again, and the helicopter quickly turns around again. It's like, oh shit. I don't think I've ever seen a helicopter actually do all those.
So the way he takes down the helicopter, takes the car, shoots it off a cliff into the water. Car becomes a submarine.
Oh, that's right. And then also
they launch a sea-to-air missile,
right? And then
blow up the
I forgot about that. Jaws also was there. He got bumped off the road in a car, and he crashed into a house and just like walked out of the house.
Yeah,
it's like a cartoon. It's pretty crazy at times that this movie turns into almost like a cartoon.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So then, yeah, that was great. He drives the car off a dock. It becomes a submarine straight up, and they shoot. Oh,
dude, yeah, it's incredible.
Was it sea-to-air
missile, man,
missile straight up into the helicopter
up.
And blows it up. And poor what's her name,
Naomi, who's all over the credits.
She definitely deserved that really high credit for being in the movie for 5 seconds. And then they take this submarine over, and they're going to basically check out the base, right?
Yeah, but don't worry, man. Stromberg has these little dudes out there ready to fight the submarine.
And I will say, while this wasn't a super impressive fight scene, because it actually looked kind of lame how like not very maneuverable and cool the car was as a submarine, I was impressed that they decided to go with it.
Oh yeah.
In the end, like they did do enough to kind of be like, okay, it's usable. And I feel like that must have been really, really hard to make it look super usable. Like the footage. It would have been so hard to kind of coordinate how to have this stupid kind of probably terrible car submarine actually look kind of cool in the water when it was probably super slow and shitty. Yeah.
Especially with some of the other effects that I will get to later. That they made this look so decent.
Yeah. So then they get kind of a bomb. They kind of get a bunch of people. They see what they need to see, which is essentially that they have these submarines. Or no, what do they have in there that they see? They see
nothing really.
He looks in there and they say, okay, yeah, we know that something's going on. Anyways, they see something.
Yeah. So anyway, they make light work of the attackers, and then this scene really cracked me up. They take the car and they drive it onto a beach where there's all these families, and there's a guy drinking a bottle, you see, and then when the car pulls out of the water, he looks back at the bottle to check what he's drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So so what they see is they confirm that he is using the illegal tracking device.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
it is.
That's the only reason they did it. Yeah.
Okay.
And so then at this point,
there's a little animosity now between 007 and XXX.
XXX finds out that he killed her lover, and she's basically like, I do like boning you, but
I'm going to kill you.
I'm going to kill you when this is all over. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, but we can still have sex, right? And she's like, yes. And he's like, okay.
That's all he cares about.
Literally all he cares about. He's like, I could probably die. It's fine. And then
now our agents, there's so much that goes on.
They go on to the submarine.
They get lowered onto a submarine.
Thank God we're back on the submarine.
Yeah. And the submarine is tracking the largest tanker, second largest tanker in the
Karl
world.
Marx, yep.
In Stromberg's fleet.
Yeah. And so he's got this thing, and it never goes into port. That's how they know it's probably doing something nefarious. It's never picking up any cargo. What the fuck is that? And so they start to track it. And of course, one of the big tensions here is James Bond is like 007, licensed to kill. Also, little known fact, licensed to pull out his dick on a submarine. And that causes a lot of tension among the crew because now there's like 2 people with dicks out.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, but who do we listen to? And it's like, I'm sorry, it's 007. He's like a secret agent. He's allowed to do it.
Mm-hmm. Anyway. So the sub, while they're tracking the tanker, all of a sudden they lose it. Huge tanker just goes away. And then they surface, and all of a sudden the tanker's right on them and swallows them.
They're having all kinds of electrical issues, too. And they're like, just like what we saw in the beginning of the film, they surface, and yeah, it's right there. And they're like, it's going to fucking destroy us. And then the tanker opens up like a clam or whatever, and they go right in to the tanker. And
then they got 3 subs in there, and now we're talking.
This is also very confusing as why did they need that sub before they launched?
No idea. They did not
it's so weird. It seemed like they could have. Stromberg's plan is to destroy the world and start over. So basically, right before submarine 6 blue or blue 6 or whatever, blue submarine number 6.
Yeah.
This is more or less like right before that start of that movie, where like a crazy scientist decides to start the world over by destroying the world, and then creates all his like minions of the sea.
Yeah. That's what we got here,
It's a direct extension from that movie, or prequel to that film. And so, yeah, I didn't understand why he couldn't have launched the missiles before. It seemed like all he needed was 2 submarines.
And he had them.
Right, and he already had them to be able to launch simultaneously to... Oh, I know why. Never mind. They needed the targets for America. I'm not sure why they necessarily needed the British submarine in the place.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. One of the things that was great here, though, when the sub pulled in to the tanker... They had to communicate to the guys, get out of that submarine. And they go and they put this thing on the side of the submarine. The Limpet speaker.
Straight up.
Shout out to Mr. Limpet.
Yep.
And that's how they communicate with them.
So they all get out. They're basically captured. They find Barbara Bach, a.k.a. Triple X, among the crew. And Stromberg's basically like, me likey. Bring her. She's now my prisoner personally. It's like gross. And then James Bond is kind of like just considered
normal prisoner
of sorts,
which is so stupid.
Yeah,
they just should have been like, all right, you get a bullet right here.
So his whole crew take the submarines out, and he kind of explains like, "So, bros, like we're totally going to bomb Moscow and bomb Washington D.C. and the world will be destroyed because those are going to trigger everything else in the world, and it'll just be a nuclear wasteland except for under the sea where I live, and then we will create a world anew with me." And James Bond is like, "Fuck that." And then he stages some kind of like uprising. Yep. He's able to break free of custody, and he starts freeing all the other captured submariners. And an epic grenade battle ensues. Yeah. People are just throwing grenades left and right. It's awesome. It is just like Call of Duty before they changed it. They killed
crazy.
They killed like 100 people. And they're able to
just with grenades.
Yeah, they were able to blow their way into kind of the control tower of the submarine base or the tanker.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, what are we going to do? We can't really stop them in 3 minutes. And he's like, what we can do though is we can change the targets that they're shooting at. And so they quickly change the targets to be each other. So now when the submarines do launch, and Stromberg, seemingly like a Dumbo, has no idea that this is happening. They launch and you just see them shoot at each other and then blow each other up. And so now submarines are totally gone. Stromberg's plan is shit at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And the tanker starts to blow up. So James Bond is like, rally the troops. Let's get out of here.
But before this, Stromberg escapes on an escape boat, and probably the worst special effects I've ever seen in my entire life.
That even happened before because he went to he went from the tanker to his secret base anyway. So they don't, and it was literally like
action
puppets,
figures,
right? Yeah, it was like
action
puppets
figures inside a plastic toy boat shoot out of this thing, and they're even zoomed in on it.
Yeah, it's very, very clear, and it's one of those times where it's like, were they joking? Were they like tweaking or like just like kind of like jabbing at people to be like, fuck you guys for watching this?
Yeah. But so anyways, Bond escapes on the submarine, and they are going to go and they're going to blow up Stromberg's base. But Bond says, hey, whoa, my lady's on that base.
So give me 40 minutes.
And tiny little jet ski with actual skis.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, right. Yeah. And this was before jet skis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this is one of the things that popularized jet skis. So you can even see on the side, they called it a water bike. So it was before the term jet ski even existed. So this is one of those things where it's like it became wildly popular afterwards as this is kind of a toy, and they were, as James Bond things often were, they were kind of like looking for like weird kind of toy things for him to use that would be like kind of secret agency. So a water bike was one of those things that he was on. Yeah, very early jet ski.
Craziness.
Pretty awesome. And so he ends up in this in the base. He meets up with Stromberg, and talk about an not very illustrious ending to a main bad guy or something. He's sitting at a table and he's like, Bond, I was expecting you. How about you sit across the table from me? And I was expecting him to like try to put him in, like, he tries to get him into the water tank through the elevator, but Bond is like, hey, I'm just standing on the sides, like, fuck you. Like, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, sit over there. And then he has this long tube from a gun, like, pointed at Bond, and he just can't help but, like, kind of tip off Bond. He's like, well, I hope you have a nice dinner. And Bond is like, oh, shit. Like, quickly gets out of the way of his gun.
It doesn't even shoot like a bullet.
No,
it shoots like a rocket
arrow
or something,
yeah.
and it's so slow.
Super
Shot
slow.
a bullet. Dude, done.
And then James Bond gets up. Stromberg is like, hey, that's weird. I didn't kill him. And James Bond gets up, points his gun into the tube, and is like, how about you have a very Merry Christmas or some shit. And then shoots him through the tube, and Stromberg just dies.
Yeah, that's it.
End of Stromberg.
But don't worry, man, because Bond is about to escape, and he runs into Jaws.
Right, and the real villain of the movie shows up. It's almost like they were like, Stromberg, a really great bad guy for us. And then they were like, oh, Jaws is way cooler. Fuck Stromberg.
Jaws he literally can't die.
Just fucking kill him. And then they're like, Jaws, this is going to be the real battle. And so they have one last battle. They kind of duke it out. Jaws ends up in the shark tank, and he actually bites the shit out of a shark.
He kills a shark.
Yeah, and then the whole place starts to kind of like fall apart because the submarine shot up the base. And so James Bond, and he frees Barbara Bach, and she gets all wet. So she's like looking like extra sexy. It's like, oh wow, okay. I can't believe James Bond is actually able to focus for a second and actually get out of this thing. Because I would feel like he'd be like, how about we just stay here and bone real quick? He's like, well, no, we actually have to escape to live. He's like, oh, God.
He's like, but oh, look at this. This escape pod I found also has booze and a nice bed and all sorts of, candles.
It's
and
like
what is this?
This is where you know that James Bond actually died. This is all in his imagination as he like sinking to the bottom of the ocean in a submarine. He's like, yes, I'm just boning one last time in this tiny submarine bed with champagne. And it's like, okay. Yeah. And then they also don't show Jaws dying because you know that they realized Jaws was amazing as a character. And it's like, we need him for another movie. And it turned out to be the case. Next movie, he's actually also in it.
Yeah. And so they go away. They get caught by their superiors banging.
Yeah, they're like, well, we
Talk
better
about
not,
embarrassing.
We better not let anyone know that we're totally banging, and I decided not to kill you and become best lovers forever and ever. Ooh. And then they float right into an area where Q and M and the Russian equivalent are looking at them like, what the fuck, guys? Come on.
Right.
Probably it's like a matter of course. Probably M's like, not again, Bond. Oh. This is the 5th time this week he's boned one of the enemy spies.
He just looks back. You guys checking for crabs? Yeah, he's got crabs.
For sure. And that's basically the end, right?
That's the end, man. That went pretty long, but there is so much going on. There's so many different scenes. Like, we were in Egypt for half the frickin' movie. What are we doing there?
Also, it's just me and you, so we can go as long as we want.
Yeah. But, like, the whole Egypt scene, it was... I didn't know any of the people that they were meeting with.
No, not really. They're kind of jumping from place to place.
Really, what was going on?
I also felt like the beginning did the same thing, where they were kind of like jumping from spot to spot to really set up the James Bond's mission. And
you didn't need it.
It was only until later that I kind of all the pieces fall together, so you didn't actually need all that beginning stuff. Like it would have come together with the explanations anyways. It only was like a little more confusing in the beginning when they were kind of just throwing stuff at you, without really any other explanation. Yeah. So yeah.
So I guess we can get into some ratings here.
Yeah, so we did have ratings from the other hosts. I'm not sure if they were going to record them separately. Probably the answer to that is no. So we may as well just give their stuff.
So you want to read Alex's there?
What his number was?
I'll read it here. Yeah. He says, not the best Bond movie with a sub, but pretty good. 7 for subs, 5 for Bond movies, 69 for love story, and favorite spy code name.
XXX, yeah.
You dirty dog.
And then we had a 7.5 from our boy Zach, and that is not a Zach fact. That's a true fact. 7.5. And then we got a surprising 5 from Brom. I guess he didn't love it. Probably, my guess is that it's going to be something like the production value, kind of those weird stunts, and how kind of silly it really got at certain times.
Again, pretty goofy.
It's a pretty goofy film. I'm going to come in at a 6.5, I think.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had a lot of fun watching this. I do think it was pretty obvious they were about to jump the shark of sorts.
Bite the shark?
Bite the shark. Because Moonraker, by all accounts, is absurd. It wasn't supposed to be the next one after Moonraker, but because of Star Wars and how like popular that was, they made this weird space James Bond where he was like in space, and basically it's like the worst.
Because why not?
So it did seem like they were starting to tail towards some of the more silly aspects of James Bond at this point. But I don't know. I had a lot of fun watching it. I thought Jaws was a really, really fun bad guy. I enjoyed his kind of like continual unstoppableness throughout the film, and every time that you kind of got to see him battle and almost die and then turn out not to die and stuff. So I had a lot of fun. I wish submarines were more prominent. They are very vital to the plot, but we don't actually get to see too much going on with them. Although a plus for a submarine car, which is always a benefit. Also, weird thing, if people want to watch, I can't recall if it's the first or second Cannonball Run. I feel like there are multiple things in one of the Cannonball Runs that steal directly from this film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, including driving a very similar looking car into the water, turning it into a submarine, and I believe shooting a rocket out of it. Yeah. Ooh. Jackie Chan's in the car.
They also have that. They have a submarine car in Kingsman 2.
And that's very James Bondy as well.
Yeah, those are very fun movies.
What about you? What do you got?
I'm going to come in at like a 6. I liked some of the cheesiness. The ski scene. I mean, that's just like total 70s, especially with the music. Some of that effect with the boat shooting out really threw me off. But like you said, Jaws is a great super villain. He's like you said, he's unstoppable. He's almost inhuman. He literally gets shot in the teeth and it deflects off. Yep. And it doesn't even phase him. He's so good. Some of the stuff I thought that, I guess I was kind of put off by how horny James Bond was.
Yeah.
So like, what am I watching here? This is really odd. Like, I can't watch this if my family's around. They'd be like, what is this dirty film you're watching, Kyle? So, that being said, submarine car was awesome. I even went and I looked up that Lotus right afterwards because I thought, man, several years have passed. What are these things going for online? Because they'd be really fun to screw around with. But they're still expensive.
No.
Unfortunately. But yeah, fun movie. Like the banana suit and ski scene. Egypt got really confusing.
Yeah. All right. So I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants a little bit for my section. So I'm going to do some trivia, but we'll see. We'll see how many I can kind of collect as we kind of go along. So there was a lot of trouble with production of this film. One was just trying to get a director at all. So originally they approached Steven Spielberg, who was in post-production of Jaws at the time that this film was going into pre-production.
Can you imagine?
It'd been amazing. Yeah.
If he's like, I just directed a movie called Jaws, and now I have a bad guy named Jaws.
Yeah. So, and then the first director they actually got it because he eventually decided against it, or they decided against him. I'm not sure. Probably he decided against it. And the first director attached to the film was Guy Hamilton, who directed the previous 3 Bond films, but he left after getting the opportunity to direct 1978 film Superman, although he didn't actually end up directing that. That was Richard Donner. So he got the opportunity, but then ultimately that didn't work out.
Shoot.
They ended up turning to Lewis Gilbert, who had directed the earlier Bond film, You Only Live Twice. So that ended up being who the person was. So once that was finished, they were trying to finish the script, but had to go through many revisions and numerous writers. Originally, they wanted to use the famous Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
Wait, was it Blofeld?
Yeah, Blofeld. That was supposed to be the
bad guy?
Yeah. But Kevin McClory, who owned the film rights to Thunderball, forced an injunction on Ann Pictures against using Blofeld. Jesus, I can't say it. Or Spectre. So they weren't able to use either of those things in the film. So this was pending. Dang. And so in order to kind of just get around the injunction and not delay production any further, they made up a new villain, Stromberg, who's basically just a Blofeld stand-in for this. Yeah, so...
Come on, Kurd. You could have been better.
Yeah, I guess so Jaws and Sandor, the two... Sandor was kind of the stocky guy, and Jaws was the other one. They were based on Solhor and Slugsley Morant, I guess, who were from the book.
Slugsy?
Yeah, so they were named Saul and Slugsley in the book, I guess. So Ian Fleming didn't want them to actually adapt the book, so they were only able to use the name of the novel and not the actual novel. So apparently the plot of the novel has not much to do with this actual film.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, right?
I didn't even know that James Bond had novels associated with it.
You didn't know that it was based on a series of novels?
No.
There are a whole bunch of them. Yeah, Ian Fleming.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you would enjoy them, although you do.
I did just pick up a book from the library the other day. Yeah.
Wow.
It's about a Western.
It is a Western or about a Western.
Sorry, it is a Western.
It's a book about Westerns. It's like a book about Western books.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't think you were much of a book guy.
I'm not.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah. And as I said, this kind of was a preceding Moonraker that actually reused kind of part of this plot. So the idea of Moonraker is also to destroy mankind and create a new race / new civilization, which is kind of
is it on the moon?
Yes, it is actually. James Bond goes to the moon in that one. Did you not know that? I've
never seen it.
Yeah. Well, anyways, apparently Catherine Deneuve was willing to play the female lead, so the Bond girl.
Okay.
You say so? She had a normal rate of $400,000 per picture, but she said, "Oh, I'd do it for $250,000." So she cut it from $400,000 to $250,000. But the producer Broccoli, that's his name, Broccoli, would not pay above $80,000. So I didn't
seriously.
I don't even know who that is. Catherine Deneuve. Deneuve. Okay, yeah. So now that I'm reading it correctly, I do know the name.
Okay,
Catherine Deneuve. So, anyways, that kind of gets me to my what ifs for the casting.
Sure.
So, what other Bond girls? Because this was Barbara Bach.
Yeah.
So, what other Bond girls would have been good in this one? So, do you know any other Bond girls, by the way?
Oh man, not off the top of my head.
You don't know any? Because there's really.
I know Halle Berry.
There we go. Okay, so how about Halle Berry
as the agent?
It would also be, or you could say someone else.
Or Naomi just gets blown up. I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know whether that would work?
Yeah, I don't know. Because she can't. Halle Berry would look at me like, oh, she's Russian. She's really got that great Russian accent.
And you're like, no thanks.
Probably not.
What about? Oh shit! I can't even find a good list. What was the Dr. Christmas?
What are you talking about?
It was the wife of Charlie Sheen. Is one of the Bond girls. God damn it! I'm really screwing this one up because there's a whole bunch of them.
Great podcasting here, Jamie.
I know. I screwed it up. So, anyways,
so the one you gave me, no.
Rose, what about
I'm sure we could find a spot for Halle Berry.
And that's it. Yeah, fuck it. That's the end of that one. Halle Berry.
There we go.
No. But there is one more I do remember.
Oh, Ed Harris?
Ed Harris.
Well, obviously Ed Harris.
Oh, Kim Basinger. She's another one. Do you know Kim Basinger?
Man, if I saw.
What about Jane Seymour?
I don't know any of these.
She was the mom who was in Wedding Crashers, who wanted Owen Wilson to touch her tits.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
What about Terry Hatcher? She was in one too, apparently.
Wait, like from
Submarine.
Isn't she also in that Desperate Housewives show?
Yeah, she was in Desperate Housewives, yeah.
Sure, yeah. She could be in it.
This is a real good one. Like, yeah. No, that also works.
I guess.
That one also works. And that one also works.
Yeah. But mainly Ed Harris.
Yes.
And I would want him to be the woman that Stromberg tries to kill in the beginning. But, drops in the shark tank.
Yeah.
He drops in, punches a shark in the face, gets out soaking wet, beats the hell out of Kurd, and then now he's Kurd.
I bet James Bond would do him.
Oh.
He would do anything.
You had Harris with a wig?
Yeah.
All right, let's do this.
And then just a quick Phantom Zone.
Engage the Phantom. Phantom's engaged, sir.
So, I mean, it's not even hard to do because you know the guy. Kurt Jurgens. Kurd. Our boy Kurd, which we used previously in Enemy Below. And I went to The Russians Are Coming through Theodore Bickel in that one. And from there, we can kind of move forwards. Just the way that we did it for The Russians Are Coming, or Enemy Below.
Ooh.
So it's not even that hard. I didn't even have to think about it. Didn't have to do any research. Just like my trivia, which I also didn't do anything for.
Wow. You are a bang-up podcaster today.
Yeah, maybe you could edit that so I don't sound so idiotic for a little bit.
Nope, it'll be there.
Not happening?
No.
Okay, well.
All right. Let's wrap this thing up with Subs Worldwide. It's Subs Worldwide. So, we are in the third week of Cold War Movie Month, and we saw British submarines. So I figured, well, what the heck? Britain was around at the time of the Cold War, was it not? So, I went with the Amphion Class.
Oh, I like that.
I know.
Amphion, what does that mean?
I don't know. It's the name of the first one that they produced. It was originally designed for using in the Pacific War, but only 2 were actually completed by the end of all that action in World War II. So, kind of sucks. They were modernized and used until the 70s. And the reason that they decided to make these was after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Brits realized that they needed something more badass and decided to go to replace their old ones that were very slow and couldn't really dive deep enough, and they made these. A benefit to these also is they only took 8 months to build, while the prior took 15 months. So, quite the jump in time, almost twice as fast. And after they were put into service, their primary objective was to intercept Soviet submarines. So, specs for these things, they are 280 feet long. They can cruise along at 18.5 knots on the surface, only 8 knots while submerged. They have a range of 10,500 nautical miles at 11 knots on the surface. While submerged, they can cruise to 16 nautical miles.
Oh.
Not super far.
That's not bad. That's not great at all, yeah.
No. They can dive to 500 foot. They can also hold 61 officers and men combined.
It's almost as much as our submarine can hold.
Almost. Well, it's funny because I was looking at the submarines that were produced around this time, and it was this, and then the X class, which can only hold 4.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Remember Submarine X1?
I don't remember. What's that? Can we recap the whole film right now?
Yeah, we could do it. All right. For weapons, they had 6 21-inch bow torpedo tubes, 4 21-inch torpedo tubes in the stern. They could hold either 16 torpedoes or 26 mines. Hold on, this one's going to get pretty long. So they also had one 4-inch gun. Wow.
So just a 4-inch gun?
Yeah. 4-inch diameter.
4-inch gun.
Yeah.
Click, click.
As long as my finger. And they actually put those on the subs during the Indonesia-Malaysia confrontation in the 60s.
What? My favorite confrontation.
I know. We all got to have one. It also had the Orlikon 20-millimeter cannon and 3 machine guns. So, the Amphion class is the class of submarine. How do I word this? That is the last sub lost in service.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes. In 1951.
Oh, really? That's a long time ago.
A long time ago. So the HMS Affray went down and with 75 sailors on board. It was lost during a simulation called Exercise Spring Train with a smaller crew, skeleton crew, which makes you wonder.
Uh-oh.
I know, we're running skeleton crew right now. So they only had 50. They had 50 people like actively working, and then they had more people on board for training. So they were just kind of, we're in sub training.
But why is this considered in active duty or whatever? Like it's the last one lost.
Well, it's the last one lost period.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so everything was going fine. The exercise was going, and people expected the sub to return back to home because it needed repairs because it had leaking battery compartments, which is already not good. You probably shouldn't send it out during that. So a ship saw it going down. They did a little, hey, we're here. And then it radioed in, did its checks for a while. Nobody heard from it. Like the next day. So to find it, there were 24 boats from 4 different nations that went out to look for it. And even one of the subs went and sat on the bottom of the ocean floor so that other subs could train and pick up what that would look like from their sonar. And during this time, all the other Amphion Class subs were ordered to stay in port because nobody knew why the heck it went down.
Why it happened, yeah.
They didn't want to lose another one. During the search, actually, there's some weird things that happened, but Morse code was picked up by several boats, and it said, we're trapped on the bottom, but that couldn't help. Nobody could find it. Nobody could, like, locate them based on that. So some of the weird things that happened, there were rumors that Russia could have been involved in it. And there was something strange. Something massive was found on the bottom of the ocean floor. Like they picked it up, but then they thought that's way too big to be the affray. So they skipped over it. They went back to the same area the next day. That thing was gone. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? And another weird kind of a supernatural thing. The captain's wife saw a ghost that told her the location of the sub, where it was down, turned out to be completely accurate. I was like, that's kind of weird.
Okay.
But anyways.
I don't believe that.
Yeah. So there are a few speculations for the cause as to the sinking. One, it could have been a battery explosion. The second one was they had a snorkel that they referred to as a snort mast. It was found out to be faulty. Maybe that got stuck open, totally flooded the sub. It is still sunk. They have not brought it up, and it is labeled a controlled site, which means if you want to scuba dive to it, you have to get permission from the Ministry of Defense.
I can't even believe you can. That actually kind of reminds me because, so I don't know if you noticed what the submarine in the James Bond, in Spy Love Me, what the submarine was called. So it's called the USS Wayne. They were wearing hats that said it. But its number was, I think, 593, which corresponds to the USS Thresher, which was actually a U.S. boat that sunk in the 60s or something like that. And so you're talking about the last one for Britain. This was, I don't know if this is the last one for America, but it was one that was in the 60s. It was doing training off Cape Cod, and it had kind of went down and was doing the same thing where it was communicating up. To let everyone know everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. And then they're like, oh, something's going wrong. We're got a little bit of a leak here. We're controlling it. We are tilted up. We're going to be blowing our ballast and heading upwards. Yeah. And then everything became garbled and they lost contact with it. And it ended up being destroyed. They kind of figured out why. There was some kind of freezing that happened in the blowing of the ballast, so they weren't able to like blow the ballast or something because at that like depth that they were at, the test depth, it actually, the condensation would freeze and then not allow anything to be released. And then once that happened, there was the leak got bad enough that the engines weren't able to be turned on, so they weren't able to surface either, and they ended up sinking all the way to the bottom. So they kind of fixed that defect, so it shouldn't happen anymore. But one of the really interesting things about that also was that they got the Titanic, the people who ended up finding the Titanic with their like super deep sea, and part of them kind of funding them to go find the Titanic was like a clandestine mission to find 2 different sunken submarine locations. And when they went down, first of all, it took forever, so they really only had like 3 days to find Titanic, which was like crazy. And the guy was like super bummed because he was convinced he wasn't going to be able to find it in such a short amount of time. But then when they went down for both those submarines, because of how deep it was where they sunk, he said the submarines looked like they had been through a paper shredder.
Really?
They were just like in a million pieces, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
Totally exploded. I mean, or imploded / then fell apart or whatever.
Dang.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I read. I don't know if it's like fake news or whatever, but
now when they went down, were they in? I mean, I assumed it's not an ROV. It was a manned vehicle, right?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what they did with the first time they discovered Titanic or whatever. I actually don't think it was manned. I think it would have been an ROV, but
that would make you really nervous if you see something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Surface.
We're going up. So yeah, that's it. So if you could just edit the part where I look like an idiot, that'd be great, Kyle.
That's not going to happen.
Also, thanks for listening to Submersion. Find us on SoundCloud and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Can't get enough of us? Don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every Thursday. And if you like what you heard, please go ahead and give us a rating.